Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, and I'm the host and creator of our show. Today, we talk with Don Hobbs. Don has been an icon and a marketing guru in the real estate industry for a long, long time. He used to work with Jim Rohn and side by side with Tony Robbins. Recently, and ironically full circle, has been named the president of Success Magazine. I'm really excited about our conversation today, and I know you're going to take a lot away. So on to the ascent. Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, and I'm the creator and host of our show. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a treat. And I will tell you, I always say that, and yet the individual that I'm speaking with today, I've known for a long, long time, had a huge impact on my business. And I'm just excited we get to spend some time with a gentleman by the name of Don Hobbs. Now, first, let me tell you this. If you've been around real estate for any period of time, you know Don. Don created, along with his partner, Greg Herder, they created this amazing company called Hobbs and Herder, and frankly launched a number of successful real estate agents. And I say into stardom, and yet they really put him on the map from a marketing perspective. Don and Greg were marketing geniuses. And so I've known Don for a long time, and so it's going to be a pleasure to talk with him today. He's going to tell you more about who Don is, and yet here's what I would share with you. He's an entrepreneur, business owner, and he recently was named the president of Success Magazine. And for someone who's followed Success Magazine for a long time, I'm excited about that because I know that Don's days actually go back to working with Jim Rohn, and we're going to talk about that today. So let's just kick it off. Don, I'm excited that you're here. Welcome.
Thanks, Pat. What a great intro. And it's fun to have history like that where you can go back and remember when we first were in the same place at the same time. So thanks for having me on the show. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. So Don, who is Don Hobbs? Let's just kind of, you tell us more what I left out, and we'll kind of get kicked off that way. So who's Don Hobbs?
You hit the entrepreneur part, which obviously just from a business standpoint, I could say fly fisherman, golfer, lover of life, Allison's far lesser half. I mean, I could there's a lot of things in there, but I would say probably for our purposes today, you might say lover of all things human potential and personal development, because that's kind of what I've been doing for my whole freaking life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it. Yeah.
And you're down in Puerto Rico.
We are.
Yeah.
We're down in Puerto Rico, 2 pups and a kitty, and we're having a great time down here.
Isn't that fun?
It
well,
is.
So Don, we're going to talk about success and in your recent involvement in that. Yet let's go back to, our journey with our listeners. The Success Ascent is about the journey of success. And sometimes we go up, sometimes we kind of go backwards a little bit, yet it's always an upward trajectory. So talk a little bit about Hobbs and Herder and how that, yeah, exactly, right? The up and down.
Couldn't resist.
Before we go way back to the Jim Rohn days, talk about Hobbs and Herder and kind of how that came together and just sure. What you kind of learned in going through that journey in building that amazing company.
Well, thanks first of all for all the compliments, because we back in the day we were named to the top 25 most influential people in real estate, and I don't always have a sense of that, but I get stories, right? I get stories and people are like, well, this is what it really did, or here's what we saw. When we started the company, it was really, I would say almost an accident. And listen, I'm going to say that obviously a lot of things are about being prepared and timing, right? That yep. We've heard all those phrases. So I'm not going to give it all away and say it was just accidental. But, Greg and I were friends. I'd had him on my team at Jim Rohn's company. So we moved forward. We're out of there. And we're going to start something. I was scared to death to start something. He was scared to death to start something. Neither of us had a job. And it was like, hey, you want to do something together? So we did. And then we were trying to figure out what the heck is it we're going to do that's not a copy, replica of Jim Rohn, that wasn't going down the path of firewalking with Tony, who we'd worked with early on. Any of that stuff. It was just like, what's our thing? What's our niche going to be?
Right.
And funny enough, Pat, and most people even that knew us well never knew this part. We started our program off with like a full day, almost like a sales training program, time management, closing skills. Certain just, traditional things. Mm-hmm. And there was this one little section called personal branding, and it was 30 minutes long. Out of a whole day, it was 30 minutes long. And when we did the feedback sheets at the end of it, hey, this was great and that was great and this was wonderful. That was amazing. I've never thought of that, and it was really interesting just to watch how, again, it was right time, right place, right, right space, and then listening to the client. And we just started to expand that, and we went, wow, we think we've got something. And then we went a little longer, a little longer. And, thank you for the compliment about marketing genius. The reality is we knew nothing. I didn't have a marketing degree. I mean, later Greg went on to get an MBA. But I mean, we just were, we kind of based everything on how marketing worked in the world and said, why don't realtors do that?
Right.
Why is it that they have their own set of rules? Let's advertise in all the places that only realtors advertise. That makes sense. Why do we do the same things over and over again? Of course, you could go back and poke fun at, why don't you get a picture that looks like you? I mean, there's just 1,000 things, right? There was designations were a little bit newer, right? The RS, right. The CRS, the CRB. And, what does that have to do with any client? What do they know about a CRB? I mean, so there was a lot of questions we had that we posed to people, and they went, I don't know. Well, we had answers. And so it turned out to be that, we started getting a following, and it became a wildfire because honestly, it was, again, it was that time. If you probably don't even have a sense of it. In 1986, when we started that company, there was no personal branding. There was none. It was, you joined, Century 21 so you could put on a gold coat, right, and be part of their brand, or a powder blue polyester coat over a DRA, or a red carpet coat, red coat. That was a brand. And we came along and said, no, it's all about you, Pat. And if I don't call and ask for you by name, even if you're with the number one company, you're still broke. And so, it made sense to people. I mean, it was just right. The way business is done. And I contend that most realtors didn't think like business people. They were thinking like realtors following realtors who were mostly broke, as is the history. And, and we showed them a different way. And so thank you. We did pop up some of the biggest agents in the whole world. And it wasn't like a little bit more. It was like dramatically 2X, 3X, 5X. I remember when the Century 21 number one person C21 was $20 million globally, 20 million in sales globally. And I think we had Walter Sanford do 50 that year, right? It was just like radical different stuff.
Yeah. Those numbers weren't heard of at that time.
No, not at all. So anyway, we were in a good place, and, made a difference for a lot of people. And it was really, I mean, I'm just blessed to have that history because it was awesome. It was a real adventure, and so cool to be in the formation stages of stuff, and also to be that impactful as we were able to do. It's really, I mean, what a blessing.
Well, there's two things I take away. First, the cat you let out of the bag is you built this incredible marketing company, and you didn't know anything about marketing, yet you knew about people, and you knew about what they might need. And so that's a great thing for people to take away. You don't always have to know the path. You just have to be passionate about it. And then the other thing is you guys really stood out. One of our good mutual friends, John Prescott, I'll still remember seeing him before I actually met him on the cover of magazine on top of that motorcycle. And that was his deal, right? And this was even before I met him. And yet I remember that as part of the marketing. So pretty impressive. So as you were building that, and of course it was kind of an unknown, right? I mean, again, you said, that's not how people came into the business. What did you learn about building a company that you would do again, and B, maybe you wouldn't do again?
Yeah, great question. I was thinking I wrote it down even to say it, and that was, we did not begin with the end in mind. We were basically replacing our job. I mean, that's really from a standpoint of, I hadn't really had a job, but I mean, I was working with Rohn, and, I hadn't had a job since I was 18. But the point is, I was really replacing an income, and I was just looking for how do we get some people to come and attend? It was really from here forward instead of from there backwards, which is right. Really what would be the best way, right? Begin as mentors of yours and mine both have said, right? Yeah. Begin with the end in mind. And we didn't do that. But, along the way, I think there was some great lessons, because in the early days, Greg and I would go out and sell tickets. I mean, a la, it was the Jim Rohn style. It's the Tony Robbins style to this day. They may have billboards over the city streets, but there's going to be some salesperson coming into all the sales meetings and selling tickets, right? And we did that too. So we did it because we were the only salespeople for us. And then, eventually we got to where we were busy 250 days a year, living on the road, had no life, hated it. It was exciting for a while, but oh my gosh, that was horrible. And then it got worse because we split up and went two different directions because we were so busy, and we did 250 days each on the road, separate from each other. And then finally we got some wisdom to start leveraging ourselves. And that would be the lesson, right? The sales staff was the first group. And I remember actually we had built a pretty good sized company. We had probably a $10 million company. I mean, we were busting butt.
Yeah.
Can I say that on?
Yeah, you can say that.
There's no censors. Beep.
Yeah.
And literally somebody said to us, why don't you replace yourself as the seminar? Why don't you stop doing all the programs, and what could you give away? And we started raising speakers instead of just salespeople. And pretty soon we had all of our programs being taught by somebody, except we kept 7 3-day events a year. And so at one point in time, I almost felt unemployed because I then had nothing to do, right? I mean, that was really kind of the pinnacle of all of it was we're doing far more volume. We were at that point a 20 plus million, almost $25 million company, and we were doing almost nothing. So the lesson for me, Pat, and you're I know you're an advocate of this, and I know you've done this in your own world, and that is leverage is key, and finding leverage points, right? And today we've got more opportunities, but at that time it was, we just weren't thinking that way. We were thinking in terms of like becoming the celebrity instead of how do I get people to help me build my celebrity, and how do we leverage the possibilities through celebrity,
right?
What does that give you? What freedom does it give you? And how do you act differently as a result of that?
Yeah.
And of course, we didn't have social media, so that's another. Today it's like, wow, and what a difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Does
that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. And it's like how a lot of companies start, right? Is they don't necessarily know where they're going to end up, and yet they have the commitment, they're all in, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to make it work. And you guys, you certainly did that. And I just, I want to tell you thank you from me, because you did marketing for us along the way, and I know that made a difference in our business, and a lot of businesses, right? I mean, you just the folks that you worked with were really the who's who in the industry. So let's go back. So recently, Success Magazine was acquired by EXPI World Holdings, if I've got that correct. Right. And you were put in charge. You're the president of Success. And I love that, because what an opportunity. I mean, your background in personal development and branding and all of that. And yet this really kind of comes full circle. You used to work with Jim Rohn. You used to work with Tony Robbins. And I mean, it's like, so I'm only like one person away from Tony Robbins, right? Through you, I can get to Tony Robbins is what I understand. Right. And I followed all those people, and I love Jim Rohn's teaching. So let's go back, talk about working with Jim Rohn. Like, what was that like?
Well, that was amazing. For me, it was formational. I mean, for sure, it was formational. So I always say I wasn't from the wrong side of the tracks. I was right near the tracks. I was on the right side, just right near the tracks, right? Yep. I didn't come from money. I didn't come from a family that had any. My grandfather, who taught me most of my personal life lessons, he had a 4th grade education, so very simple people. And so when I got around Rohn, my mom had bought a ticket. So I was 18 years old, and she says, I went to go see this guy, and he made me think of you, which now looking back, when I say those words, I'm like, how does he make me think of him, or whatever. I mean, obviously. But she said, I think you'd really love him. And of course, it's like a Saturday night and date night. I'm like, the last thing I want to be going to is a seminar. And I remember going there and walking into this, and again, West and South Coast Plaza, Orange County, California, big, massive ballroom. I'd never been in a place like that. I'd never seen anything like that. Chandeliers and all this stuff. And I'm just like, what? Look at this world. And then this guy started speaking, and I had a stenographer's notebook. I mean, long before I ever knew about journals and things like that. And a stenographer's notebook, if anybody even knows what the heck that is.
That was the thing that you flip up, right? I know. I'm old, just like you are. I get it.
19 pages of notes later. But I mean, I remember being like, 20 minutes in going, oh my gosh, I love this.
Yeah.
I love this, right? the first break, I ran up to him and I said, I want to do everything, because they were, they had products that they had a 3-day weekend at his ranch up in Northern California. And this stuff was all out of my league. This was like $1,000 weekend, and it was 1976.
Right.
$1,000. You might as well
That's
have
a lot of money.
a $15,000, event, right?
Yeah.
And his programs and stuff. And I went in and sold anything and everything after that. But I told him, I said, I want to take all your stuff. I want to be around you. And thank you for, changing my world tonight. And I'm sure I was one of 1,000 people. So he probably just patted my head and sent me off into the crowd again. But it made such an impact. And when I got to the weekend, the ranch, and spent that 3 days with him, and I became so infatuated with the message and the what it did for me, what it felt like to me, and what I could see it doing for people that were with me in both places. And I walked up to him and I said, I want to work for you. And I didn't even know what that meant. I don't know I was like, what jobs do you have? I have no idea what that means, but I want to do that.
We got the carpet cleaning job that starts at 8:00 in the morning.
Yeah. So I will say that, he was gracious. And of course, I ended up being the youngest at that time person with the staff. And then 3 months later, this big gawky kid that some people have heard of, called Tony Robbins, came along, and we had a chance to work together for a few years. But being around Rohn I didn't have much of a relationship with my dad. And so in my mind, I won't say Rohn ever knew that until many years later. But in my mind, he was like dad. He was teaching me life lessons. There was just wisdom in every sentence. He was later they dubbed him America's foremost business philosopher. That was really his forte. The guy just got things. I mean, he would write in his journals, and you go, how do you come up with this stuff? Like, who thinks like that, right? I mean, it was just like being at the feet of Plato or something. I mean, honestly, it was. It was, it was a modern day version of that, and it was just remarkable. And of course, there was also some fun stuff, because Tony was there, and the Herbalife founders kind of moved with us at that time. So these young kids, like, we were all 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And it was just dynamic, and it was phenomenal. And I've said many times, there was like that moment in time where it was almost like Camelot. This has never been done before. Like, there isn't a group like this. And it was really fascinating to see how when it broke up, it went a lot of different directions, and a lot of people had a lot of impact on. The ripple was pretty ominous, and Rohn's impact is being felt. He passed. His anniversary of his death was a few days ago, and last week actually, and 11 years. And 11 years later, his legacy is living on. He's more popular today. He's bigger today than he was during his lifetime. So,
he's impacted so many people, and
so many, millions.
So many people have taken his teachings and continued with that, and So let's kind of dial forward. So now you are named the president of Success Magazine. And I've been a subscriber. I don't know. You could go look. You go look, and you come back and you tell me how long. But it's been a long time, right? And so first, I was excited when that happened for you, because I've known you for a long time, and so talk about that coming full circle. First, when you heard about the opportunity, like, what started going through your mind?
Well, the irony and the beautiful part of it. I mean, again, it's my story, so to me it feels really good. For anybody else, like, whatever. But I honestly think it's pretty amazing, because starting with Rohn, and there was this material. So before Jim passed, all of Jim Rohn's IP was through my friend Kyle Wilson and Jim. They sold the library of Jim Rohn stuff, all of his intellectual property, to Success Magazine. What are the chances of that, right?
Right.
So like, things that I was in the room filming as the president of Jim Rohn's company are now in my my library of stuff that we actually still have as product. And I'm going, that's just wild. I mean, so to think that I could start my career, my business career, and I would love to think I could end my career, even if it's in 10 or 15 years, with this stuff. And of course, Jim Rohn's stuff is only a small part of Success. Right. But how cool is that full circle nature of that, right? Yeah. I just felt like, wow, what a blessing to get a call. And Glenn had said, hey, I'm interested in this. I got a chance to buy Success. And if I do, I'd like to do it with you. I know the space, but you know it well. And would you consider? And so it was like, wow, what a trip. What a life trip.
What
Yeah, what a
what an
life trip.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So when we started talking today, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is your perspective on what's happening in the world today from a business perspective, like business today. So give me your thoughts on that, because we started talking about that and I loved where you were going with that.
Well, the thing that I see, and Pat, this has been happening for a long time, and we'll give some credit to Tim Ferriss, who came up with the 4-hour work week years ago. I don't even know what year that was written, but I remember it was revolutionary, and there were people that were. I remember reading it and going, "That's not realistic. I mean, there's no freaking way you can do that."
Yep.
Mostly because we hadn't figured out how the leverage part worked, and today, because of COVID amplifying this. But I mean, even as we would have not had that, the world is working differently. We're a smaller place. It's a small world. Well, it's always been a small world. It's way smaller.
Right.
And I was with a guy that we mutually know this morning for a glass of water. And literally he's talking about his team is 2 people in the Philippines, 1 in Pakistan, and he and his lady are here in Puerto Rico. That's his team, right? I mean, the formation of companies is different. The way that we do business is different. Everything is different. So this work from anywhere lifestyle has become the way of business. Then COVID sent people home and they're starting to go, well, I don't actually need to be in the office to do what I do.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, some were let go of their jobs. And so they're having to figure out, how do I be a consultant in what I'm a tactician in? I know this world that I'm in. I know what I do, and I'm really good at it. But I don't know how to do business. And I believe there's a tremendous. Say hi to Max. There's a tremendous place in there for us to be able to show people the way. And while success has always been a personal development publication, because the XPI has that same feeling of working from any place and all of that, I believe we can really show people the way that we're working and the way that we're working specifically. Like, we want success to be a model of the future of work.
Right.
And I believe we're already doing that. I believe that people are going to be highly impressed with the way we do business, and then how fast we can ramp things up, that we're always possible, but we're never possible by the way that things were done.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't know if that kind of answers where you were going, but to me, the future of work is very different. It also opens up a lot of questions for real estate, for those of us that have been in the space forever. If I don't have to go into my job and I have to live close to my work because of traffic, where can I live and do my work? Right. I mean, Allison's doing real estate from Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
She's got a team operating, fully functioning in Austin. And we've got this company that we've got that's in 30 states from Puerto Rico. I mean, all of it, everything we're doing is from anywhere.
Well,
so I think that's really where we need to wake up and smell the coffee, because COVID forced us to start questioning, is this the only way to do things? And I think we have to, I have a thought around that.
It's going to be interesting because, like you said, there's companies that are large companies, recognizable companies, who are saying, hey, if you want to work from home, you can do that. And of course, there's a cause and effect on property, real estate, commercial property, when all of a sudden you don't need 2 million square feet. And then there's people who go, I love staying home because I don't have to fight traffic, and they were fighting an hour to 2 hour. And then there's people at home and go, I can't do this at home because of whatever circuit. So it really is going to be interesting. And I don't know, it's not an either or, right? I think it's what you're saying is it's going to be a blend of, it's going to look different for some, maybe not so different for others. And all of that's going to be opportunities. And the other thing that you said, which I loved, is, people are really having to reinvent themselves all over the place, right? Because things are changing and technology is changing. And so, I loved your observations on that. So let's shift gears a little bit. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm prepared you for this. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
I've got 2 of them for you, and one comes right out of what you just said, in our conversation. That is, tear the factory down and reinvent. And when I think back to Nightingale, the steel magnate, Carnegie.
Carnegie.
And Carnegie had that whole process of, tearing his factories down because the retrofit of steel mills was never as effective as the brand new ones. And it was such a radical experience to read about that. And as I'm looking at the world, as you and I were just talking about it, it's time. It's like we have the opportunity, but we also probably have the mandate to have to tear down the factory.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's almost like I've asked this as a coach. I've asked this of realtors, people that you would know, and said, you know, go to your team meeting planning for next year and ask them the question, if we didn't know how real estate was done now, and you knew there were buyers and sellers, how would you do real estate? Like, why don't you start from scratch?
Start from scratch, right?
How would you do it? Right. Knowing what you know now, having technology that you have now, all those things, what would you do now? Because what we keep trying to do is hang on to the way it's always been, and then retrofit it, and then shift it, and you know, it's painful because we can't really get where we could go. And that's why sometimes the new people coming into your business, the real estate space where you've been so long, the new people come in and blow it up, and we're like, that's not fair. I mean, they don't even know anything. It's like, well, yeah, but they understand technology, they understand social media, they understand the world today. Right?
Yeah. Well, they don't have any limitations, right? They don't have any barriers.
They don't. And
then they're not fighting the natural thing that happens with change with people, right? They just don't like change. Just any change, I don't like it.
Exactly. And that brings me to the second thing, and you asked me for one, but I'm going to give you two. The other one is think big, because what I have keenly become aware of is that as much as we like to think that it's, you know, Jim Rohn's massive action and all that, absolutely, for sure, yes. But the level that you think is the level to which you will achieve. And when you're thinking small, you'll get small results. Regardless of how hard you work, you will get small results. Right. And when you think big, no matter how hard you work, it's not going to be a function of that. It's going to be about matter how big you think. And so that's been a major life lesson for me. And honestly, probably the last 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that, I mean, that was one of Jim's philosophies, was your thinking, right? It all starts with
attitude. Yeah,
yep,
absolutely. No, it's not that I was not familiar with the concept, but really the maybe the breaking apart of the thinking big, how it's unrelated to the work that we do.
Right.
The thinking big has nothing to do. They have nothing to do with each other.
Exactly.
Attitude clearly makes a difference. Mindset clearly makes a difference. Right. You know, the way you see yourself clearly makes a difference. All those things. But I think that's been the biggest distinction for me.
So I prepared you for this. Let's flip it upside down.
Maybe.
Maybe. What's the worst advice that you've ever been given that either you followed and you would say, don't ever do that, or you didn't follow and thank goodness you didn't?
You know, I laugh at this because clearly I've had lots of bad advice, and because I've done a lot of stupid things in my life, and I'm sure some of it was at somebody's urging. Yeah. I can't put my finger on exactly, but I'll tell you, I will say that if I go back to 2008 through 10, where I'd like to say that I didn't do anything wrong, if anything, there were several things I did wrong, not the least of which is got too stretched out thinking I was invincible. And so the advice would be, hey, let's grow faster. Let's leverage our growth instead of let's grow smartly, wisely. And that was a big one. That was a hurtful lesson to go through that time. And the other one, if I was in business, was the advice was fire faster, get rid of people faster, get lean faster. And I didn't do that. So that's the opposite of what you're asking. But man, that's a big mistake in my world. I'll tell you that much. It was a huge mistake. It's
actually a pretty common one. And I think, you know, right now, and let's just take real estate, you know, we've been living on a lot of momentum. That's not to take effort away from anybody. You know, however, we've been in this upcycle since 2009, right? And, you know, at some point, I mean, it's interesting. You can have a pandemic, you can have 30 million people unemployed and all the things going on. And yet real estate seems to be, you know, insulated from it a little bit, right? I mean, we're having record years, record profitability, you know, and yet at some point that's going to change. And the deal is are we prepared for it when it does? And we probably get to experience the same things we've done in other changes where the skill level isn't as where it needs to be. And we're not prepared financially and cash flow and in the bank and all those type of things. So that's, right. You know, that's great advice that we didn't probably take. And we've always heard it before. Right.
Yeah. So I didn't answer your question. I guess I don't focus too much on on the negative, which is
Yeah.
really an interesting thing. Pollyanna, right? I just can't remember the bad stuff.
Well, you put it out, right? And here's what I found. And actually, you've done everything. You've done the same thing that everybody does. It's bad advice, and you've learned from it. And therefore, you don't look at it as bad advice. You just look at it as an opportunity to learn. And that's really what I always want to pull out. So you did it. You did a great job. So, so what book would you recommend right now that you've either read or reading that, for entrepreneurs, business owners to read?
Yeah, definitely two of them that are really fascinating to me. One is the No Rules, which is the Netflix management story. I mean, I don't know if it's a story, but it's really how they formulate their dynasty. And of course, as you know, they put a little company called Blockbuster out of business pretty darn quick, right? $6 billion company gone in 6 years. And now they're conquering the networks, right? I mean, they've moved from, who are those guys to
who's next?
Yeah, scary, right? Exactly. We're coming.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, that story is really fascinating. The other one is his name will come to him. Peter Diamandis has got his book called "The Future is Faster Than You Think."
Yeah.
And that one to me that's a must read. It's theoretical, but I'm telling you, it's showing you how fast that we can fall behind. And one of my biggest pet peeves, my greatest urgings for people, especially maybe in our age category, and you're younger than I am, so I shouldn't do that to you, but that is, don't get irrelevant. And I know people that are in their 20s that are already getting irrelevant, and if they think they're going to catch up suddenly, it's like the world is passing us by.
Yeah.
We've got to stay up with what's going on, and the future is absolutely being formed by the differences and the new things that are coming that are not just new in themselves, but they're new and allowing something else to happen. So it's multiplying the speed. It's not spooky. It's incredibly opportunistic, but it's also spooky if you're committed to staying the same.
Well, and the collaboration, right? That's different. Totally different. I think his email's titled Future Loop, right? Isn't that? I think
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get that email, and Don, I look at it, and again, age aside between the two of us, I look at it and I go, I have no idea that stuff's happening, and yet I see it and going, okay, that's going to change this or that's going to change that, and it's you got to be aware of it, right? You got to be watching it, and how would you respond to it?
I like the way he connects dots.
Yeah.
That don't seemingly deserve to be connected, but they are meaningful in a big way. So
absolutely,
a great read. Yep.
Well, first of all, you've been amazing today, and I'm just so excited for all the stuff that you're doing and what success is going to look like. It's amazing, and I know it's even going to be more amazing. So as we end today, a final thought you would share with our listeners on that journey of success, on what you're experiencing right now. What would be your final thought?
You mean besides go to success.com and get the magazine?
One more time. Besides that, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love it. That was success.com.
The success.com, yeah. Yep. And there's going to be many things coming out of that. You said it. But final thought is you are more capable. You're bigger than you know. I mean, the thing that I realize in all the human potential work that I've done is that we are, as human beings, way different and way bigger than we give ourselves credit for.
Right.
And, I've closed off many of my speeches with Marianne Williamson's Our Deepest Fear. And I won't recite it only for lack of time, but to have people look that up. And I remember, just being so touched by the words. But, when I think about the ripple effect that each of us is leaving, and Rohn used to say all the time, we live our life as an example or as a warning. And when I look at being an example, we are, either way, by the way, we cause a ripple.
Right.
Either way, we're people can look at us and go, oh, it's okay to screw around or goof off, or it's okay to not be much. It's okay to be mediocre. Apparently that's our society. That's the way we do things here.
Right.
Or you could be that person that just is almost aspirational in the way that people see the life. And I think that what we think is that somebody is special that does that, instead of realizing that's me.
Yeah.
And so that would be my urging for all of your viewers and listeners, is just remember who you really are. God didn't create no junk.
Right.
And you are in perfection. Remember that.
Yeah. I love that. It's a great way to end, Don. It's a great way to end. Well, again, thank you so much for being here today. I so appreciate everything you shared. For our listeners, we so appreciate your support. Go to your favorite podcast source, or you can go to www.thesuccessascent.com. As I end every show, Don, again, thanks so much. We appreciate you and wish you the best of success and what you're doing.
Success.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And everybody else, be safe, be healthy, and have an awesome day. Take care.